for more is June Neri, the lead economist, chief economist at BPI. So good to see you, June. Welcome back to the show.
Great to see you too, Kathy. Happy to join your show.
Right, so you gunned for 1.6%. I was trying to look for your picture here. I know you're at the lower end of the forecast still. Didn't get it quite right, but you were at the lower end of the forecast. What do you make of the result of 1.4% for April?
Yeah, better than expected is great for the consumer, Kathy. Aside from election spending, improving their capacity to spend, lower inflation restores some of the purchasing power they lost the last 2 years when inflation was 6% and 5.8% in 2022 and 2023. So that's a big relief for our consumers. Hopefully, it persists beyond the elections, Kathy.
Well, there you are, you're circled in red, but 1.6% is still the slowest in nearly 5.5 years. But now that we're at 1.4%, that's well even before the COVID-19 pandemic arrived, or since November 2019, when inflation came in at 1.2%. So will you be revising your inflation estimate for May?
Yeah, for May, most likely, because the price of rice continued to decelerate, actually decline month on month in the first few days of May, and this should bring down headline even further. Just for some facts, Kathy, the 1.4 inflation that we saw today, if it hadn't been for rice, would have been 2.4% inflation. So a huge negative contribution from rice just for the month of April.
Yeah, but how sustainable is that, though?
Yeah, so it looks like again, for the first few days of May, we're seeing further drops in the average price of rice. So that means year over year, the contribution of rice will even be a bigger negative contribution, at least through September. By October, this will not be the case anymore. And that's probably why the BSP is slowing down on, I mean, they're not rushing to cut interest rates that much.
Let me pick up on the capacity of consumers to spend, as you mentioned earlier, the role that the extra spending had that goes along in an election year. In this case, the midterm election year. What did that have on April inflation? That's a final month before the midterm election next week.
Yeah, well, probably the impact of election spending is not going to be immediate, Kathy. There could still be a lag. And considering that oil prices and many other commodity prices continue to remain favorable, we don't see the inflationary impact of election spending outweighing these disinflationary pressures coming from other components. So I guess the BSP will really have the confidence to carry out its policy of easing, at least in the next few months.
Well, that also leads us to think about the policy priority of the Bangko Sentral, which we know they're inflation targeters. But right now that inflation is not a concern and growth is more of a concern, will that be their goal then, to shore growth in the next few months?
Yes, it seems the governor has confirmed this in his recent statements. In fact, shortly after their monetary board meeting, he hinted on more aggressive easing on the part of the BSP, although 25 basis points at a time, not 50. No big cuts in any of the meetings, Kathy. Yes, because exactly the headline is well below the 2 to 4% target, and the core is still within the 2 to 4%. I think today the figure was 2.2 for the month of April. And year to date, I think the average core inflation is 2.4. So they're well within the 2 to 4% inflation target. And again, I think they are going to watch Thursday's GDP report very closely and probably have an influence on their next meeting.
Well, we're watching yours, and it's on the other side of the screen, as you can see, the red circle there. You're pretty optimistic at 6.1%. There's been a lot of talk about GDP for the full year, not even making it to 6%. So how many more Bangko Sentral rate cuts, then, is that going to entail to get to 6.1%?
Yes, if there's an all clear on all the indicators that they're watching, and if the peso continues to strengthen, oil prices continue to fall, then there really is a lot of room for the BSP Maybe we had to actually revise our rate cut outlook from 5.25% end of 2025 now down to just 5%, Kathy, no, because of such favorable indicators. No?
Before you go, let's take a quick check on the Philippine markets. The peso's been trading for over an hour, but the PSEI has just traded about 7 minutes ago, and I'm seeing it up by 1/10%. Taking a look at the currency, let's take a look at whether that's also open higher. Looks like it's opened at 55.80, so it's weakened a little bit. What do you make of the initial market reaction following the inflation result?
Yeah, so if the lower than expected inflation increases the probability of a rate cut in June, and we saw a pretty strong jobs report in the US last Friday, a combination of the fact that the likelihood that the Fed will not cut this month and the BSP cutting in June means that our interest rates will be relatively less attractive than US rates, and this could be the reason why the peso is showing a very slight reversal in the last couple of trading days.
Got that. We're going to watch for GDP next, and that's going to come in Thursday. But tomorrow, the unemployment rate, of course. But thank you so much for joining us on this very important inflation day. Neri of BPI joining us live.